All right, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? Audio good? All right, very good. So as you all started your morning today, did y'all take a shower? Yeah? Did you maybe drink some water or drink some coffee? Go to the restroom? Throw away some trash? So for many of y'all, we've been a part of your day already at North Texas Municipal Water District. Water, wastewater, and solid waste services is what we do here in the North Texas area, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation. But we're honored and to be able to serve the people of North Texas with the vital and essential services of water, wastewater, and solid waste. And I get the privilege of serving as executive director for North Texas Municipal Water District. I've been in that role for about 2 years now. May the 4th was my 2-year anniversary. May the 4th be with me. May the 4th be with me, right? So I get, as transitioning into that, I learned how to report to a 25-person board of directors, which was a new experience. We all have a boss, right? I've always had a boss, but now I have 25 of them. So it's been great. Thankfully, they're a great group of folks who govern our organization, and I love project management. I don't get to do a whole lot of it these days, but I have a background in that and commend all of you for pursuing project management and type careers, as they can be quite rewarding. We do a lot of kinds of projects in our organization, and I'll touch on many of those as we go through the presentation today. I want to start by talking a little bit about our vision statement. It's at the top of the slide. Regional service through unity, meeting our region's needs today and tomorrow. And that's a vision statement that has been with us since we were founded back in the 50s. Back in the 50s, we were originally founded when our original 10 member cities came together, knowing that the groundwater that was their source of water supply at that time was not going to be sufficient to meet the needs of their growing communities. We began providing drinking water services in 1956 to 32,000 people here in the North Texas area. Since that time, our service population has doubled 6 times, and we now serve 2.1 million people here in the North Texas with access to safe drinking water. So there's been tremendous growth across this area. We transitioned from groundwater back in the 50s to now surface water, and we'll talk about that. Over the years, we also added on the services of wastewater and solid waste at the request of our member cities. So today, we serve essentially we serve Richardson. Here we are today in Richardson. And then up north all the way to like Anna Melissa area, west to Prosper and Frisco, and then south down to like Forney and Kaufman County in that area, as well as pretty much all of Rockwall County. So that's kind of generally where we serve. So anybody in the room live in those areas? All right, so we get to serve y'all each and every day. All right, so I touched on our vision statement. Our mission is to provide high quality and dependable services each and every day in a cost-effective manner. And so that's what we're about, and what we're doing on a daily basis is delivering on that mission. We do that through 4 goals as identified in our strategic plan of service, stewardship, partnership, and people. And we implement the way that we work is through our core values, which are shown here as integrity, trust, respect, unity, safety, and teamwork. They spell out I trust. So that's what we're about. The infrastructure and kind of the numbers side of it, we maybe got some numbers people, often project managers or numbers folks. We serve up to 80 communities on any given day. And touching around 10 counties. Very large service area, 2,200 square miles. As I mentioned, serving just over 2 million people in one of the fastest growing regions in the country. And we'll talk a little bit about the growth that we're seeing and the challenges associated with that. For drinking water, we have just under 1 billion gallons a day that we can produce in safe drinking water through 7 different treatment plants. On the wastewater side of things, we've got 13 wastewater treatment plants that provide service across the region with around 163 million gallons per day, where we take wastewater in and we discharge clean water out into our community's waterways. On the solid waste side of things, we've got 3 transfer stations, and we accept around 1 million tons per year at our landfill up in Melissa, right along 121. So some of y'all may have driven by and seen that. Just to kind of give you a sense of maybe where y'all fall and who would provide your water service. This is a quick map that will help orient you. You've got Dallas County, Tarrant County, and then to the north, Denton, Collin, Rockwall, Kaufman, and you can see the green area is the area that we serve. There are a number of peer organizations that provide service to other areas, including the City of Dallas. Tarrant Regional Water District provides raw water to a number of areas on the western part of the Metroplex. And then to the north, Upper Trinity Regional Water District is a peer organization as well, to kind of orient y'all to who the water providers are here in the North Texas area. As I mentioned, growth is just tremendous here in the North Texas area, and water is essential to allow for that growth to happen. Water is the only major infrastructure component that you've got to have it in place before the people come. We can have a little congestion on our roads, but we've got to have water there before the people arrive. We have around 55,000 people moving into our service area each and every year. And that is just a tremendous challenge for us as an organization, but also a tremendous economic opportunity for our region. So here's a couple of recent news clippings of what's happening here in the area. We've got many homes, and I had another one that I didn't get in here, but Collin County has been a huge growth area for a long time. We all know that. Some of the recent census data actually indicates that on a percentage basis, Kaufman County is the fastest growing county in the country. So tremendous growth happening across the North Texas area. As I mentioned, we began providing service in the 50s to our member cities that are listed here. Additionally, we serve a number of customer cities. So about 80% of the water that we sell each year is sold to members and around 20% to customers. When these communities started with the district, they were small populations. I mean, you look across there, of those, only 2 of them had a population of 10,000, and that was Garland and McKinney. Now you look at where they're at in terms of the 2020 census data, and there's just been tremendous growth. So when we started providing service in 56, we're at 32,000. We're now around 2.1 million, and we're looking to double again to around 4 million by 2060. So the growth that we are seeing since our formation and what we're seeing today is expected to continue for a long time to come. There is a lot of folks that are interested in moving to Texas. I'm a native Texan, a proud 7th generation Texan, and there's a lot of folks wanting to join us, and I don't blame them. Like, it's a great place to live, right? So we've got a lot of people coming in, and actually about half of the growth that we're seeing across the state right now is from people having babies. So about half of the folks are moving in, and about half of them are from folks having babies. We got 55,000 coming into our service area each year, and none of them are bringing water with them. We also are in a crazy time from an economic perspective, and that impacts all of us. I know if y'all are in project delivery, it's impacting you all just the same. So we are having to budget in a time of unprecedented economic conditions. We kind of have the 3 Ps going on, as we like to talk about it. We've got people challenges. As you all know, we had the Great Resignation last year. Thankfully, things are steadying a little bit, but there's been a lot of turnover of folks within our organization. We're not immune to that. And so we're having to adjust salaries in order to keep up and stay competitive in the market. We've got huge product issues. In particular, chemicals have just gone crazy. The market for chemicals has just been super unstable. And we had to increase our chemical budgets this last year by like $40 million to be able to provide the chemicals that are needed to provide the safe drinking water that we all need each and every day. So chemical costs have just been really unstable lately, and we've also got supply chain issues that we're having to work through. With the volume of chemicals that we buy, there's not that many providers that can actually meet our demands. And so we've got to work with those providers and the conditions that they're up against to ensure that they can continue to provide the chemicals that we've got to have to meet the needs of our communities. And then planning. As we talked about, growth is our biggest challenge and our greatest opportunity. Also, from a planning standpoint, we've got to continue to construct infrastructure in order to meet the needs, and costs have been going crazy. We monitor the construction cost index in our area on an ongoing basis and make adjustments annually based on the conditions in the market for what we expect our capital project costs to be. Last summer, we made that annual adjustment, and based on what we were seeing in the market, it was a 17% increase year over year to account for the construction escalation that's been happening in this area. Thankfully, it slowed a little bit. We're looking at 5 to 7% this past year. But those are real impacts that are having a significant impact on our ability to deliver the construction projects to meet the needs. In terms of capital projects, I know for this audience, I threw this in here. We've got 138 capital projects in progress. They're divided amongst our service areas, with about 56% of those being in the water side, 37% for wastewater, and 7% for solid waste. The total contract value that we've got ongoing at this point is around $1.5 billion. So just huge investments required in order to meet those needs. As we look to the future, this is kind of a graphic that shows what our capital load has been for the last several years and what we're anticipating over the next several years. When we were in the 2018 time range, 2019, we thought this is the biggest it's ever going to be. This was like unprecedented in terms of what the capital requirements were. And now when we look to the future, where these bars were stacking is a lot lower than where these bars are stacking. So as we look to the future, we're looking at around $1 billion per year that's required across our water, wastewater, and solid waste areas to meet the needs of the region and the growth that we've got happening. And there is an impact on our rates. We are a governmental entity. We have no profits. We essentially pass through the cost of service for each of our systems. The system that most folks have interest in is our regional water system, which is what's depicted here from a rate projection standpoint. We also have about 30 other systems. On the wastewater side of things, it's broken down basically into what facilities serve your community, and you're only paying for the facilities that serve your community. But from a regional water standpoint and a rate projection standpoint, our current rate is $3.39 per 1,000 gallons. So that's about 0.3 cents per gallon, right? So it's in the grand scheme of things, and that's a wholesale rate. So that's the amount that we sell the water to our member cities at. And then our cities also have obligations and systems that they've got to operate and maintain in order to deliver it to their retail customers, the homes and businesses across their communities. So this is wholesale rate projections. When we look at what the retail rates are across the area, they vary depending on the community because each community has different needs. But generally, the water rate within communities on a retail basis continues to be about 1 penny per gallon. So while rates are going up, and that's something that we're all concerned about and doing what we can to manage, most people believe that 1 penny a gallon is still a good price for water. So as we look to the future, there's this huge capital load that we're going to continue to have is definitely going to continue to increase our rates in order to ensure that we're able to deliver on our mission of providing those reliable services each and every day. I want to talk just a little bit about our water system. So when we were being formed back in the 50s, it was when Levon Lake was being constructed. by the Corps of Engineers. And so Lavon Lake was our original, and it's kind of our mothership of our water supply. It is located here kind of in the center. And so it's right in the middle of our service area, very conveniently located to our service area. As time has gone on, Lavon Lake has not had sufficient supplies in order to meet the needs of the growing population, and so we've had to go further away in order to meet those needs. So over time, we've added on access to Lake Texoma. We've added access to Lake Tawakoni. We've added access to Chapman Lake. And then something that we're really proud of and excited about that we'll talk about in more detail is our East Fork Reuse Project, which is a constructed wetlands, and then a main stem pump station and pipeline project that maximizes the use of our constructed wetlands. So we'll talk about those more in a moment. But our most recently completed project that is super excited. Anybody ever heard of Bodark Lake? Yeah, we got a few. Nice. All right, so Bodark Lake is recently completed. It's not yet open to the public for recreational use, but the lake itself is complete. The first major reservoir to be constructed in the state of Texas in over 30 years. So a tremendous undertaking that we'll talk more about, and I'll show you some graphs and some figures that we get on a monthly basis in terms of our project delivery summary type information. So we've been delivering treated water, drinking water for over 65 years. Majority of our treatment capacity is located at 4 plants located in Wiley. So you can see here the first plant was built between 1956 and 1965. It's the original plant, and it is still in service. We just went through a major rehabilitation effort to bring it up to current needs and current standards with that aging infrastructure. But as you can see, over time, we've been building additional capacity. So this one, plant 2 was built between 72 and 88, plant 3 between 95 and 03, and plant 4 was built between 08 and 2020. Our most recent 70 million gallons per day in Wiley was constructed just a few years back. We've also got some smaller facilities in Tawakoni to treat Lake Tawakoni water, and Bonham to treat Lake Bonham water. And then we actually just did a ribbon cutting for our Leonard water treatment plant that is associated with Bodark Lake, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It's initially treating 70 million gallons per day, adjacent to the city of Leonard, will ultimately treat 280 million gallons per day. So total capacity, just under 1 billion gallons a day, which is among like the top 5 water producers in the country. So we're a very large organization from a water production standpoint. The regionalization that we've got here has, in the tremendous growth, has really led us to that place in a very quick time period. All right, so Bodark Lake, it's been decades in the making. We actually started permitting process, well, it was in the state water plan back in the 80s. So it's been talked about for a long, long time. We started our work on it in earnest in 2003. So right at 20 years to really start from, to go from starting the permitting effort to being in service. So a tremendous undertaking by many, many people over a few decades. This, it's a large lake. It covers just over 16,000 acres. That's about the size of the city of Allen, for context. So it's a large reservoir. It yields around 82 million gallons of water per day. And that is what it yields during, we plan around a drought of record. So what's the worst drought that's ever happened in our area that's on record? And we plan around that. And in that type of condition, we'll be able to get around 82 million gallons per day from Bodark Lake. It is, let's see, it's the first lake that we're the owner and operator of. So many of our supplies are from lakes that the Army Corps of Engineers owns and operates. And so the Army Corps of Engineers isn't building lakes anymore. So we took this one on and are learning to be the owner and operator of a lake, and thankful for having great peer relationships with other organizations that have done that for years and years that we're able to learn from. It came with a big price tag. $1.6 billion was the price tag for the lake and all the infrastructure to deliver water from it. So that's not just the lake, but it includes all the infrastructure components associated with it. We began impounding water in the spring of 21. Today, we're about 79% full. 79.2, I think, percent full. So it's filled up pretty good, but we aren't yet full. We are about 5 feet below full. So there's a conservation elevation that's essentially the elevation that it operates at when it's full. We're about 5 feet under that. We are monitoring that. I look at it almost every day. What's the elevation today, especially if it rains? We're about one big rainfall away from it being full. Or it could be a year and a half. So we actually have models. We have models that project what's the likelihood of it filling based on what historical rainfall patterns have been. So it could be next week, or it could be a year and a half. On average, we think it'll be full by the end of the calendar year. So we're getting there. Let's see. We actually dedicated the reservoir in October, which was a fun day. And we began delivering water from Boat Ark Lake through our Leonard water treatment plant just a few months ago. So that was quite exciting. When we talk about building the lake, there's a lot of pieces and parts that go with that. There's a number of miles of roadway improvements. So when you're talking about a lake that covers about the size of the city of Allen, there's a lot of roads that cut through that already in order for locals to be able to have access to what's going on around there. So we constructed a new bridge, FM 897. It's about a mile-long bridge over the lake. We constructed it, we paid for it, and then we turned it over to TxDOT, and now they're operating that roadway. We have 3 boat ramps that have been constructed along with the lake so that the public, when it comes open, will have access to recreational opportunities at the lake. Any fishermen in the room? We got a few, yeah, good. Okay, so we're working very closely with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to make this a premier fishing destination. Anybody familiar with their Sherlunker program? It's basically bred bass. So when you get like the biggest ones, you're supposed to turn them in to fish in Texas Parks and Wildlife. And then they selectively breed these like trophy bass. And they have put thousands and thousands of these trophy bass, the small fingerlings, I guess is what they're called, into the stock ponds that were contained within Boat Ark Lake before it filled. And now that it is filling, they've had several years to reproduce, I guess. And so we're working our way toward being a premier fishing lake, going to be competing with Lake Fork. So on the west side of the 897 bridge, it was not cleared in order to have fantastic fishing habitat. On the east side of the bridge, we actually cleared the lake so that those that like to wake surf, anybody? Those that like to play on boats, you can play on the east side of the bridge. The purpose, we will all enjoy the recreational opportunities at the lake. But the purpose of the lake is water supply, and that's why we built it. So there is the dam itself is about a 2-mile embankment, 2 miles long and up to 80 feet high in the highest spots. And there's an intake tower that is associated with that draws water out of the lake, pushes it to a pump, or draws it to a pump station that then pushes it to our treatment plant in Leonard where it's treated. On the side where we've got fishing, we did clear boat channels so that folks can still get back there. All right, so the Leonard water treatment plant is connected to the lake. It is originally a 70 million gallon per day facility. We just started delivering water in the last few months. We cut the ribbon on Friday, actually, and it's already about 80% designed for phase 2 so that we can start constructing the next phase. So we're expecting to double its capacity here in the near future, in the next few years. The ultimate capacity of 280 million gallons per day, we're expecting that to be complete in around the 2037 timeframe in order to keep up with those 55,000 people a year moving in. In order to get that full capacity of Leonard, we'll actually be bringing in some Texoma water to blend with the Bodark Lake water as part of phase 4 to fully utilize that facility. There's some very large raw water lines and treated water lines that are moving the water, and they're very large. You can drive a small car through some of them, like 84-inch diameter, and they are on the order, between the two of them, 60 miles long. And delivering water into the northern part of our service area in McKinney is where the initial delivery is happening. By delivering this Bodark Lake water into the northern part of our service area, it frees up our existing capacity in Wiley to be able to serve the growth in the southern part of the service area. So it's all connected, which allows for great efficiencies. When you build a lake and you inundate around 16,000 acres, there's mitigation requirements that go with that. And so as part of this project, we had a major mitigation undertaking where we took a 17,000 acre ranch called Riverby Ranch that is actually located up on the Red River, just north of the lake in Fannin County. And it was an active agricultural ranch. It had years and years, decades of farming that had happened. So its natural habitat was no longer existed. And so what we did was we mitigated the impacts of Bodark Lake by constructing improvements to Riverby Ranch and then also some of the upper segments of the lake itself where the streams are coming in. So the mitigation property, there was 6.5 million trees planted. That is just tremendous. It's about 40% of the number of trees in the North Texas area, like the metropolitan area. But they're pretty small, but they are growing. So there is significant requirements, very detailed requirements associated with our permit from the Corps of Engineers that outlines details of what is required from a mitigation perspective. And we've got a lot of reports and quantification of the progress of the growth that's happening that has to be quantified and submitted to the Corps of Engineers every year. So we are very fortunate to have a full service contractor that specializes in mitigation work, who is a design builder that has designed this, built it, and is now monitoring it for a 20-year period in order to ensure that we're meeting those requirements from a mitigation perspective. About half of the land was restored, restoration of wetlands. And then a lot of it was also covered in native grasses. And there's all these little ponds that were created that would create those opportunities for the wetlands. And around 70 miles of meandering streams were created as part of this mitigation effort. So tremendous undertaking. The response from wildlife has been super cool. So there's a number of University of North Texas professors and their students. Many of their students are getting their thesis on studying Riverby Ranch and the return of the wildlife, the birds and the animals and the predators that are coming back as a result of this mitigation effort. Something that has been absolutely critical to the success of Bodark Lake is partnering with the local communities. So we've been working closely with leaders in Fannin County, with their sheriff's office, with the city of Bonham, and with Texas Parks and Wildlife, as well as a number of the local schools. So really put a lot of emphasis on establishing and maintaining close partnerships with the local community, such that this is going to be a beneficial project for them in their backyard. So one of the things that has been really important to us is treating property owners fairly. So when you're having to acquire that amount of land for both the lake and the mitigation requirements, that's a lot of land to acquire. And we were able to acquire over 90% of it through willing sellers. So that was something that was really important to us organizationally, was to work with those people who were the property owners and treat them fairly, such that they would come around to being willing to sell their property to us. So we have had great success in that regard and look to the future to be able to do similar things for future opportunities. We also ensured that the project would meet the local needs of that area. So Fannin County is seeing growth now with the lake. They're actually seeing quite a lot of growth at this point. But we ensured that we would meet Fannin County's water needs into the future as for their participation in this project. There was also a lot of county roads that were very much improved, and we didn't note it here, but the electrical reliability has much improved to that local area compared to where it was. We have a lot of electrical needs. Like some of those pumps are like 3,000 horsepower pumps. They're big pumps. And so we had to get a lot of power into the area, and the locals benefited from that. So we were able to get a more robust service into their areas. Something that's very unique about Fannin County, they're either the only or there may be two. I'm not certain on this, but there's only either them or them and one other county who has zoning authority in the state of Texas. So one of the things that's really important to us is to protect water quality around Bodark Lake. And so we worked with county officials in order for them to go through the process with the legislature to gain zoning authority for around 2,000 or 5,000 feet from the shoreline of Bodark Lake. So it's very uncommon. It's common to have zoning in a city's jurisdiction, but in Fannin County, they actually have zoning authority around the lake itself. And we've been working with them in order to manage that development. All right, so talking about the money. So this is something that may look familiar to many of y'all, numbers and pie charts and scopes of work and that sort of thing. So this is kind of a breakout of what the pieces and parts are and how much each of them cost. We mentioned that the total is around 1.6 billion, and it's made up into a number of different contracts. We had 4 CMAR contracts that we procured. We had a program management contract where we had a program manager that was helping us with this huge undertaking, the largest undertaking we've ever done as an organization. And then, as I mentioned, our mitigation contractor was a design builder. So you can see here the dam reservoir, the clearing, and the terminal storage reservoir was CMAR contract 1. And that was $211 million. So that was something that we worked with Archer Western on. The second, let's see, I think we didn't have a CMAR 2. We were originally thinking mitigation would be CMAR 2, and we transitioned that to a design build type contract. That mitigation was around $213 million. And that's, again, a 20-year agreement for them to have assurance of meeting those mitigation requirements over that 20-year period. CMAR 3 was for the water treatment plant, the pump stations, both at the intake at the dam, as well as the high service pump station to get the water from the treatment plant to the service area. That was the biggest piece at $422 million. CMAR 4 here was the roads and the boat ramps, and we actually had a lot of success with engaging local contractors in those components. So there was a lot of local engagement in that contract, as well as some subs to some of the others. So for the roads, the boat ramps, and the Lake Operations Center, that was around $83 million. And then CMAR 5, the pipelines are pretty expensive at $316 million. And then there's a number of other pieces and parts that are really important to the people managing the project, right? We had some contingency allocated. We all need contingency, right? So we had some contingency allocated. Quality assurance, $39 million in quality assurance. Program administration and permitting, conflicts around the reservoir, so that's like utility conflicts and ensuring that we're addressing those utility conflicts and such. So those are kind of the pieces and parts of what it took to deliver this project from a financing standpoint. This is a very high-level graphic, which is helpful. And it's where we stand today. So this is just a little snippet out of our monthly report that we get from the program management team. What this indicates is our current estimated program cost is $1.62 million. Our baseline estimate back in 2018 was just under the $1.6 million. Our board has authorized a little bit over $1.6 billion, and our current expenditures are coming in just under 1.5 today. So we're getting pretty close to having it all done when our expenditures are getting that close to the authorized. This is a lot of details here, but just kind of breaks it out by those same pieces that we saw in the pie chart and provides information on what was the baseline estimate, what's our current estimate, and then what are the expenditures to date, so that we can just get a quick glimpse at how things are looking piece by piece. Let's see if there's any major things here. The thing that kind of went up the most was the water plant, the pump stations, and the dam maintenance facility. It was originally estimated to be around $422 million and up to $491. We all had this global pandemic hit us called COVID, right? And so we were in the midst of construction. Like, we were in heavy, heavy construction with over 1,000 people working on this project on a daily basis when that all hit. And so there were some impacts from a schedule standpoint and a cost standpoint. And it was something that we all had to work through, right? So all of a sudden, our contractors were all trying to figure out what to do with this pandemic that we've never. I remember just being in disbelief when a week of school was canceled. Like, we didn't go back after spring break. Like, that never happens, right? And so we were all trying to figure out, what do we do and how do we continue to meet the needs? Thankfully, our services are essential, and our contractors were able to continue to work during that time, but they did have to make adjustments to align with the protocols that were provided by the people that were making those protocols. And so there was many adjustments that were required. There were a number of delivery delays in terms of equipment that we had to work through as part of responding to that, and we were all impacted. I know you all were as well. Here's another way to kind of slice and dice it, and this kind of gives you a sense for, it's essentially the same information just in a tabular format. This report's like 20 pages long. I just pulled a few things out to kind of give you a glimpse. So just last Friday, we actually celebrated the delivery of water from our Leonard water treatment plant. So we had a quick ribbon cutting with our board of directors. We offered some tours and had a great time celebrating that. So we're thankful. This is the biggest undertaking we've ever had. And it's really been a tremendous opportunity to be a part of it. As some of one of the speakers for the engineering firm actually was given a talk at the ribbon cutting. He had calculated that there had been 60 man years or person years of effort associated with the design of this project. So it's just been a huge undertaking. Typically the construction side's like tenfold that. So there's a lot of folks that spent a lot of their career contributing to the work that we're doing here in order to do something that really matters. And it's cool to be a part of that, providing these essential services to the communities that we serve. All right, I'm going to transition into something else that we think is pretty cool. We have the same water on Earth that we had when the dinosaurs were here. We've all heard about the water cycle, right? So water recycles, and that's something that most people don't think about, but it's true. And so one of the things that we do a great job of is ensuring that we're making best use of the resources available to us. And so one of the ways that we do that is we constructed a natural treatment system, a wetlands, down in the Seagoville area. And so I'll kind of give a little bit of a visual of how this works in a moment, but I'll talk a little bit about the wetlands and the education associated with it first. So we talk a lot about public-private partnerships. That's something that I think is important in many markets. And this is a great example of how a public-private partnership can be of benefit across the region. So the Rosewood Corporation, part of the Hunt family legacy, had a ranch, a Seagoville ranch, that was a couple of thousand acres. And they their family is very conservation minded and had an interest in doing good, being good stewards of the land, which they had. And so we found out that we had an opportunity to partner in construction of a wetlands. And so through that, we partnered initially through leasing the land from the Rosewood Corporation and then subsequently purchased the land from them in order to construct this 1,840-acre wetlands. Which is essentially you have plantings and you're having water flow through those plantings in order to remove sediment and nutrients to polish that water to help with the purification process prior to returning it for further treatment into Lavon Lake. So let's see, when we made this arrangement with the Rosewood Corporation, something that was really important to both of us was to educate others on the importance of conservation and being good stewards of our land and being good stewards of our water resources. So when we began this partnership, we came together and formed the John Sands Wetland Center, which is actually an education center that provides conservation education primarily to school-age children. So they have field trips for 4th, 5th grade kids on a regular basis. And I get the privilege of sitting on their board, and we had our board meeting yesterday. And so they have schools coming in all the time with busloads of kiddos to teach them about wetlands ecology, to teach them about wildlife, to teach them about how to use water wisely. And so we're really proud of that education component through that nonprofit center that was formed through our public-private partnership. One of the kind of bonus things is once this wetlands was constructed, there was a pair of nesting bald eagles, and they are lifetime partners, bald eagles are, and they made home near the wetlands. And so there's actually bald eagle watching that regularly happens out at the wetlands. And I think it's like 18 baby bald eagles, or there's a better word for that, but baby bald eagles have been born out near this facility. So in addition to it provides around 90 million gallons per day of drinking water to us. It also provides a great habitat opportunity and a great education opportunity for people from around the North Texas area. So how it works. So I mentioned we've got a number of wastewater treatment plants where we take wastewater in and then we return clean water into our community's waterways. So those treatment plants are located around the area, kind of spread out through various communities. They discharge into those local waterways, and then they eventually make their way into the East Fork of the Trinity River. And what we do is we pick them up downstream out of the East Fork of the Trinity River, send them through our constructed wetlands, and then after that water spends about 10 to 14 days, so a couple of weeks in our wetlands where it's receiving additional polishing through sedimentation, through biological activity with the plants, and also UV or sunlight does a good amount of treatment as well. From there, it's then returned back up to Lavon Lake as additional water supply. So this is a scheme that's worked very good for us and allows us to make use of those water resources that are available to us here in the North Texas area. The Trinity River Main Stem Pump Station has allowed us to maximize the use of that wetlands. And so we'll talk about that. I'll show you how it fits in. But essentially on the main stem of the Trinity River, so we're doing all this work on the East Fork of the Trinity River. On the main stem that goes to Fort Worth, there's also a lot of treatment plants that are discharging into the main stem of the Trinity River. And we contracted with the Trinity River Authority, who we purchase water from. And we pick that up out of the main stem of the Trinity River, and we on average can get around 50 million gallons per day, maxing up to 100 million gallons per day, and get it out. There's a little settling basin. Here's a picture of the pump station. And then we have a 17-mile pipeline that takes that water up to our wetlands for polishing before returning it to Lavon Lake. Another big project, around $120 million effort that was just completed in year 2020. All right, so we've got all these various supplies of drinking water that are Lavon Lake. There are East Fork wetlands that we just talked about. We've got Lake Texoma. We've got some water in Lake Tawakoni in the Sabine Basin. All Chapman Lake, Bodark Lake, and we've got over the years through 2080, we've been looking at what we expect our demands to be for drinking water. And as I mentioned, we're expecting to see our population double again by 2060. And when we look at those dry year demands, what we expect to happen if there's a drought of record, these existing supplies, we're having to add additional supplies regularly in order to meet those needs. So you can see here that we're expanding Leonard to 140 here in the next couple of years. And then we expanded to 210, and then we expanded to 280. And before we know it, by 2036, we need an additional water supply. I mentioned that we worked on Bodark Lake for 20 years in earnest. So our next water supply is not going to be a new lake. We don't have time to get that done in this period of time, but we do need another water supply, and we're earnestly working on about 5 different things to see which one of those is going to work out. And it's something that I spend a lot of time on, is trying to figure out where's our next water going to come from. We're very fortunate in the state of Texas to have a state that has a state water planning process. That doesn't happen everywhere. And we are very fortunate that it does here in the state of Texas. And so we have what we call a Region C water plan. It's a bottom-up approach, and Region C in the state water plan is essentially the North Texas area. And when we look across the different organizations that provide water services in the North Texas area, so it's us, the city of Dallas, the city of Fort Worth, who's supplied through Tarrant Regional Water District, Upper Trinity Regional Water District, and then a number of other smaller entities as well. This is a chart that is kind of, what are our future supplies? Where are they going to come from? And so there's a number of places that they're going to come from. People like to talk about new reservoirs, and they are super exciting, but they really only make up about 17% of our future supplies over the next 50 years. So there's a lot of other ways that we're going to have additional supplies available to us. And one of the biggest is conservation and reuse. So using water wisely is something that we all have a part in, right? We've all used water already today, and hopefully we're all using it wisely. That's a place that we're putting a lot of emphasis on outreach to the general public and working through the cities that we serve in order to educate people on how to use water wisely, because between conservation and reuse, that makes up 31% of our future supplies. We've already seen a big reduction over the last 20 years in how many gallons per capita per day. So essentially, how much water does each person in our service area use on a daily basis? We've seen a pretty good reduction in that over the last 20 years. We're anticipating that people will continue to make reductions in how much water they're using each day. And the easiest place to do that is in how we water our yards, and doing that wisely, right? So in the peak summertime demands, up to half of the water that we're producing as drinking water, and I'm drinking, I'll take another drink now. Yeah. This is water, yes, yes. About half of it is used for outdoor irrigation. And about half of that water that's used for outdoor irrigation is not being used wisely. It's hitting sidewalks, it's running off, it's not soaking into the ground and providing the benefit of why you're putting it out there. And so we put a lot of attention into those education programs to allow people to make better decisions on how to use water wisely. In fact, it's a really important part of water supply. And so it's something that we've been investing in for a number of years. And it's actually helped us defer about $1 billion in capital by people using less. So if y'all are using less, we have to build fewer projects, and the ratepayers don't have to pay for those projects. So it's been really successful thus far. We think we can do better, and we're going to continue to strive to do better. Some of the ways that we get the word out is through outreach programs. A few of those are waterforotter.org. I think we have folks today at a couple of elementary schools. This is the characters that go out into elementary schools and do programs for 4th and 5th graders that teach them about how to use water wisely. So we've got Otis the Otter, we've got Farrah the Fox, and we've got Bob the Bobcat that show up and in the cafeteria or the assembly hall and do a little program for the kiddos. And I will tell you all, y'all parents in the room, there is nobody better at influencing you and putting you on a guilt trip than your child, right? So we educate the youth so that they'll go home to their parents and to their grandparents and tell them how they need to use water more wisely. So that's been an award-winning program for us and one that's a lot of fun. Watermyyard.org, let's see, here it is one that you all can sign up for today. So that's a website. You can go to that website and sign up to receive text messages or emails on a weekly basis that tell you, based on local meteorological data, do you need to water your yard? And so we've got weather stations set up. I think there's around 25 weather stations set up around our service area. They're actually operated by Texas A&M AgriLife. And their scientists are involved in doing math to figure out if we need to water our yards, and we'll get that word out to you. We also do local campaigns, so you may see our billboards out on things like No More, Water Less, and then we do a regional campaign that's called Water is Awesome. That regional campaign, we partner with Dallas Water Utilities and Tarrant Regional Water District. We do a lot of media buys. Media buys are really expensive, and so by partnering together, we're able to get a common message out across the North Texas area on how water is awesome and we should all use it wisely. All right, so I'm going to transition for a minute into our wastewater system. We serve around 24 communities with wastewater services each and every day. About 1.4 million North Texas residents. In order to do that, we again partner with the cities who have those retail connections. So they're actually the ones that are connecting to the homes and businesses. And then we've got the large diameter pipelines and the larger pump stations that are conveying that wastewater from those communities into our 13 treatment plants, treating it and discharging clean water into our community's waterways. Our service area is kind of depicted here. It's much of Collin County, much of Rockwall County, and then it overlaps a little bit with Dallas and Kaufman County. We've got a number of different systems. I mentioned we've got over 30 systems that we do individual rate projections for earlier. So the regional wastewater system is one of those systems. It's got some of our larger treatment plants in there. So our largest treatment plant today is 64 million gallons per day. And then we've got a number of smaller plants. There's 9 of them in our sewer system. Each of those is managed individually have their own budgets and their own contracts with cities in order to provide that service, and they just pay for the facility that they use. So total capacity of around 160 million gallons per day. Again, there's a lot of major projects that go with providing these services. Most of the people moving in want to be able to flush their toilet and do their laundry too. So in Frisco, we recently completed a project at our Stewart Creek West treatment plant. This is just a stone's throw from the Star. So when you go to the Star in that area, this facility is serving you. It was completed in 21 for a total price tag of around $62 million. In East Plano, we've got some peak flow improvements going on that are substantially complete right now at a price tag of around $49 million. And then our Wilson Creek facility, which I mentioned is the largest one we've got, just did a recent expansion for about $53 million. And then I'll spend the most time talking about our biggest undertaking ever on the wastewater side of things, which is ongoing right now. And that is our Sister Grove Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility. That is a mouthful. All right, so talking about Sister Grove, it is to meet the growing needs primarily in the Collin County area. So it serves like McKinney, Anna, Melissa, Frisco, that general area. And it is east of the city of McKinney. It's actually in McKinney's ETJ and just north of New Hope. Anybody know where New Hope is? There's a few, okay, so it's just north of New Hope. And we actually, one of the things that's really important to us as an organization is to be a good neighbor. And when you're talking about wastewater, that's a big deal, right? And so we bought a very large tract of land, around 1,000 acres, in order to have plenty of buffer from our treatment facilities to our nearest neighbors. And so we received our permit for this facility in 2020 and have been under construction since around that time. One of the agencies that we work with a lot is the Texas Water Development Board. So they're a state agency. Their board is governed by governor appointees. And we work with them in a couple of different ways. They're the ones that administer our state water planning process across the state of Texas. And then also they act as a bank for the state of Texas for infrastructure funding for water. So when there's these federal funds that are getting passed down for infrastructure funding, which we all hear about on the news, it's the Texas Water Development Board that is administering those funds from a water standpoint. And then also the Water Development Board put some state funding into that as well. So we actually sold bonds like when y'all remember when interest rates were like nothing when COVID hit? We got really lucky and sold bonds during that time frame. And so we had a bond sale of $460 million for this facility. And we got it at an interest rate of 0.155%. Yeah, right. Right. So that's great because who's ultimately paying the bill, right? It's you all. It's the ratepayers. And so that's saving $160 million to the ratepayers of the service area. So we got really lucky on a timing standpoint. We're not seeing that today, but we like that we had it then. We'll take that, right? All right. I mentioned being a great neighbor. Something that I'm really proud of for us as an organization is that we take odor control really seriously. So before coming to North Texas Municipal Water District, I was an engineering consultant, I was a project manager, and I worked with a lot of water utilities across the North Texas area, and I can say with confidence that we take odor control seriously, much more like just thinking about some of our peers. But it's something that's really important to us, and so we do have advanced odor control technologies included. That is totally out of date because we started construction a few years ago. So construction is not starting this September. It started a couple of years back. All right, so I mentioned we had a large plot of land. This is the 1,000 acres. And this is where the treatment facilities will be through all 4 phases. So The initial phase of this project is 16 million gallons per day. We are immediately following that up with another 16. So that funding that I mentioned gets us to essentially the first 32 million gallons per day. It's permitted to be a 64 million gallon per day facility. So we've got some more expansions that have been authorized by the state. And then we master plan this site to ultimately be able to treat 128 million gallons per day. So a pretty large facility in the area. Something else to mention, we've got an existing lift station that we're expanding to bring flow up to the treatment plant. When you talk about building a new plant, you think about the cost of the plant itself. That getting water to the plant and water away from the plant is quite costly as well. And so that's a big part of it. We also have a couple of mile-long outfall pipeline that's pretty large diameter tunnel that I'll show you all a picture of. So this, we're delivering this project using CMAR, Construction Manager at Risk. They have broken out a number of different packages for various contractors. And so this image is kind of color-coded by who the different contracts are for the packages that have been broken out by the CMAR contractor. Additionally, we did seek additional help from a program management standpoint, and so I'm going to show you a few of the graphs that we get on a monthly basis from that program manager that is really actively managing this effort. So this is construction project picture, right? So we got some construction people in the room. We got a few, yeah. All right, so we like construction projects. There's a lot of dirt moving that's happening, a lot of concrete pouring that's happening. You can't really see much of a plant there yet. These are a couple of clarifiers. These are around 100 foot in diameter, and then an aeration basin that will actually, it's where the heart of the process is. So when we talk about wastewater treatment, it's physical, where you're settling things out. It's chemical, where you're treating things with chemicals, and then it's biological. And the biological piece is really fascinating. And it has a lot of similarities to what happens in your tummy. There's tons of microorganisms in a liter. There's about 1 trillion microorganisms that are actually treating the water. And so anyway, the heart of the process will be in here one of these days. This is a picture of the tunnel to get the clean water from the treatment plant out to the creek. So just a fun little tunnel picture. And then here's some numbers. So this kind of gives you a sense of how the program breaks down. The biggest part, and this is essentially the amount that we got from the Texas Water Development Board, which is the treatment plant specific. So phase 1 facility is the biggest part. That's the first 16 million gallons per day of the treatment process. Phase 2 will be expanding that to double its capacity. There's a lot of the things that we're doing in phase 1 that will support the needs of phase 2. So one of the things that you always think about when you're managing projects is what comes down the road. Like, we want to think about what we've got in our little box today, but we also want to think about what's coming after that. And so we're making decisions such that in phase 1, we're incurring some costs to create efficiencies in what's going to happen in phase 2. There's around, the outfall tunnel is around 68 million. There's $35 million in engineering services. So lots of engineering work here. Program administration, including the QC to some extent. Property acquisition. Again, we've got some contingency identified at about 6 million. So here's the pieces and parts. This one's not as far along as what you saw with Bodark Lake. The current expenditures are around 286 million of the 462 million that's been authorized by the board. The current estimate is 620 million, and our baseline budget's 546. So we've gone up quite a lot there. Some of that is the market, so kind of out of our control. But in one case, a big chunk of that going up was attributed to a decision that we made in terms of that outfall tunnel. So I showed you all the map of where this sits. This right now is a very rural area. It's not going to be rural for long. There's a lot of development happening. And this is a couple of mile outfall tunnel that we're constructing. And we made the decision to go ahead and build that for future phases because it's going to be more cost effective in the long run. So as we were going through that design process, we said, okay, we can spend another 40 million now, but it'll save us 80 million down the road. And so we went ahead and made that decision to increase the cost of the project to make a good long-term investment. And there's a lot of development. There's neighborhoods going in right along this. And so we didn't want to have to come back and disturb them not too far down the road. So that was a part of the decision as well. All right. Here's a fun graph. Y'all ever do earned value versus planned value charts? Anybody? Yeah, okay, good. So this is a chart that kind of shows here's what we expected the earned value to be over time. And there was a period when our earned value was trending above the line, but we kind of had a crossover here in the last several months to where we're trending behind. But there's always reasons, right? So on the whole, we're about 60% complete, and we've got a schedule performance index. Anybody use that term? Anybody? Oh, there's a few. Okay, so this is like serious program management kind of stuff here. All right, so our schedule performance index is at 0.89. Not bad. I had some other pieces and parts to this that I'm not putting in here that weren't quite as good. All right, so I want to talk just a minute about solid waste. So we've got 5 member cities in the solid waste system. There's City of Allen, Frisco, McKinney, Plano, Richardson. And then we also have a lot of customers. So we provide solid waste to much of Collin County. We do have the 3 transfer stations. One of them's 2 of them are pretty close to here, actually. The Lookout Drive transfer station just east of 75 on Lookout Drive here in Richardson. And then the Parkway transfer station is right on the border of Richardson and Plano, off Plano Parkway, I believe. And then we've got one, the busiest of all of them is the Custer Road transfer station. Anybody ever been there? My husband goes there pretty regularly. We have made efforts to improve the traffic flow pattern there. Has anybody noticed? We're working at it. That's something we're working at, okay? So anyway, it's a very busy transfer station. And then we've got our 121 Regional Disposal Facility, or landfill, up in Melissa along 121. I think the 7th largest landfill in terms of how much waste we accept on an annual basis in the state of Texas. So it's a good size landfill. And we get regular feedback from the TCEQ, who is our regulator, that it's very well managed. And I actually, from time to time, will go kind of sit with folks that are working and spend some time in one of the scale houses at the landfill and then also at the transfer stations. And I get to interface with the people that are bringing in waste from the haulers, the contract haulers. So most cities have a contract hauler that actually does the waste collection and then brings it to our transfer stations or to our landfill. So like a waste management, it would be an example of a contract hauler. And we get regular feedback that it's very well managed. And so I'm not a solid waste professional. It's not my area of expertise, but I think our folks are doing an awesome job. Another interesting thing about this is it has an approximate site life of 40 years. And one of the ways that they're doing an awesome job is by really being diligent in how they place the waste and how they compact it to maximize that site life. The undertaking associated with getting a new landfill is huge. And so we're really trying to use what we have wisely, such that we don't have to do that for a while. And when this landfill was opened over 20 years ago, it was expected to have a site life of 40 years. And it's still expected to have another 40 years because we have been working at that efficiently. So hats off to our folks there. Another thing that's kind of cool about it is we hear about green energy, right? Everybody, we hear about it on the radio, buy green energy. Well, we produce green energy out at our landfill. One of the ways that you can control odor is by pulling a vacuum on the landfill such that the air is not emitting from it, but it's being pulled to a renewable gas plant that is located there on site. So we've got a public-private partnership with Murrow Renewables, who actually constructs and operates the gas wells that are pulling a vacuum on the landfill, and it's producing over $2 million a year in revenue that is to the benefit, again, of the ratepayers to reduce the costs that they're having to pay for solid waste services. It also reduces CO2 emissions. All right, so we talked a lot about a lot of engineering projects and capital. When we talk about our workforce, our people, we've got a lot of different kinds of skill set within our organization and a lot of different functions. So we talked about water, wastewater, solid waste. In water and wastewater, we have a lot of operators, people who are actually operating the facilities out on a daily basis. In solid waste, we have a lot of heavy equipment operators. They get to drive the, this is a new term for me, yellow iron, like the really heavy Caterpillar kind of stuff. And I got to drive some of it a few weeks ago, which was fun. And then big trucks that are taking waste from the transfer stations to the landfill. Y'all probably see them on 75, I do too. And then we have a lot of folks that are shared services that create efficiencies across our organization by being a resource to all of those areas. So we've got centralized maintenance. We've got an engineering department that includes inspection. It's over 100 folks. We've got folks in admin. We've got around 32 people in the lab. We have a huge amount of laboratory work that we're doing each and every day. We've got IT, and then we've got a number of other services as well. So there's a lot of different types of skill sets and backgrounds and that are required on a daily basis to be able to deliver on the needs. And every one of them is important, like the payroll folks. Like, what if our payroll folks didn't show up? We wouldn't have a workforce for very long, would we? So every one of those roles is super important in our success. I think I'm getting short on time, so I'm going to move pretty quick. But I didn't think I'd be able to talk for an hour and 15 minutes, but what do you know? I can. So here's some of our departments: finance, accounting, procurement, human resources, engineering, real estate, construction, planning, permitting, energy. We have an energy manager. We spend over like $20 million a year in power. So we've got somebody that's helping us pre-purchase power years into the future so that we can get good rates. We've got IT. We've got environmental services that has a number of subsections. We've got centralized maintenance that's taking care of all this stuff each and every day. We've got health and safety, and we've got fleets. And I was going to highlight one of our initiatives out of our strategic plan. So this is just a kind of one-pager front and back of our strategic plan. It has our vision, mission, goals, objectives, our values, and then on the other side, it's got detailed initiatives that are bottom-up initiatives. And this is an example of one of those that's been managed by our fleet department to establish a centralized vehicle motor pool system on our Wiley campus. So we've talked about some really big projects, mega projects. Sometimes it's little projects that need to get done too, right? So our fleet department took on this project, and in a matter of just half a year or so was able to establish a centralized fleet that instead of each department having their own vehicles, we bring those together and manage them more efficiently that way. So it allows us to right-size our fleet, increase vehicle accessibility, and then when we have accidents, which happen from time to time, allows for replacement vehicles to be available. There was some technology involved in this. There was a system and then a kiosk where you go to this kiosk after you kind of rent a vehicle. So sometimes it's little projects that really make a difference, and our strategic plan we've made a big effort to make that actionable. So we had a nice strategic plan that cast kind of vision for a while, but we did a bottom-up approach to say, how can we improve as an organization? And establishing a centralized motor pool vehicle was one of the 63 initiatives that was suggested from a bottom-up approach. And so I'm proud of our folks for identifying how we can continue to get better as an organization and improve. Want to end by saying that unity is our strength. Since 51, the vision and foundation for our member cities and the region is that we're all in this together. So when you're providing these essential regional services across a large area, we've got to stick together. We've got to make sure that we ensure that those are available each and every day, such that we continue to have access to the things that we all expect each and every day. So I took a little bit more time than I thought I would, but with that, I guess that's all I have. I don't know, we probably don't have time for questions, or do we?
Take one or two, I think, and they're quick.
Okay, all right, yes ma'am.
Does Texas Water Utility have any plan to use AI, artificial intelligence, to reduce costs, such as the breakage of the water pipeline and the water main?
So do we have any plans to use artificial intelligence to reduce costs, such as breakage of water mains?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a pretty sophisticated linear asset management program that does evaluate, it's not artificial intelligence, but it's using data in order to do analysis and predict what the useful life is and prioritize where we're doing inspections such that we can do targeted repairs. Yes. All right. Yeah. Are we a Primavera shop? So trying to remember. I don't think internally we don't do Primavera schedules. However, we do have engineers and consultants that use Primavera in order for the schedule that they're providing to us on a monthly basis.